So we have previously, for about 20 years, we've been exporting to the Middle East. So that market has been fantastic throughout COVID as well. We've seen some really good growth, 40-60% growth from pre-COVID numbers.
Hello and welcome to the Global Trade Made Easy podcast. In this podcast, we speak to the global trade leaders, innovators and influencers from around the world and Australia. We talk about ideas that can disrupt your organization, industry, or even careers. So let's dig in. Hi everybody, this is Tejas Souza. I'm the Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer for ImpexDocs. In today's show, we will be talking to Nathan Hyde, CEO of Yarra Valley Dairy, and also Nikki, the Export Manager from Yarra Valley Dairy. Welcome, Nathan and Nikki.
Thank you very much, Tejas. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well. Let's talk about the inception of Yarra Valley Dairy. Can you tell us a little bit about how Yarra Valley Dairy started or how you got engaged, Nathan, with the Yarra Valley Dairy, the journey so far?
I will let Nikki take you through the journey of the dairy, but I joined the business 3 years ago. So as the CEO, a long background in food and beverage, manufacturing, distribution, marketing, and so on. The real appeal for me was to join a business that had brand integrity and also something that I could work with a great team and shape and, put them into a position that really has us at the forefront of that artisan cheese making within Australia. And it's an industry that was fledgling for a little while there, but it really seems to be lifting and growing. And the interest in cheese at the moment is very strong. The progression of our brands is pretty high in demand. A while ago, I created the role of export manager. Nikki's been with the business for around about 12 plus years, initially as national sales manager. And then Nikki had a break to spend some time with her family, and a well-deserved one, I might add. But I wanted to keep Nikki engaged in the business because of Nikki's experience and also understanding of the whole artisan cheese category. I just asked Nikki to come back, a capacity that worked for her more than anything else and her family. And so Nick's been doing the export role now for around about 18 months and is really starting to make some solid inroads, and we'll talk more about that later on. But Nick, it'd be great if you could take us through the history of the dairy, how it came about.
One of the things I've loved about working at the dairy is being able to be a part of this story, and to work with Mary Mooney, who is the original owner of the dairy, who really started this whole vision and business. So it's been, incredible journey to be part of that story. And really where that story began was in 1994 when Mary, who lived on the farm, which was her original family's home, began to experiment with making some cheese really for her family. So it was a really simple style cheese that she was making. I think originally she was even hanging the cheese from, cheesecloth on the back of a chair in the kitchen. It was a very simple, soft farmhouse style cheese. But Mary's absolute dedication and persistence and vision to create something unique was what started the process of creating Persian Feta, Australia's first marinated cheese, which I think most people listening, I hope, have tried this style of cheese and well-versed in Yarra Valley Dairy Persian Feta. So for me, it was a real no-brainer, the same as Nathan, to come on board with a really iconic Australian brand and be part of that story. And being part of a family-owned business, if anyone out there has been part of one, you really do become part of the family. It's incredible. And I think people, when I meet them, they just assume that I am actually one of the members of the family, because you get so incredibly passionate and you get involved in all different areas of the business, from, where I started, which was in the factory washing cheese molds, to making cheese, terrible cheese, by the way. I only lasted about a week in that role before the team, I think, realised I'd be better talking about cheese and selling it than making. But I think it really is just about being part of such an iconic Australian brand for us, working with Mary and an incredible team to just keep that tradition alive and make handmade beautiful cheeses. It is a slow process. You have to be dedicated, I think, to be part of artisan cheese in Australia. It's not a commodity cheese. It's a very artisan product that we make. But just an incredible journey to be part of it.
That's a beautiful story. So tell me one thing. You mentioned Persian Feta. Tell me more about it.
Absolutely. Have you tried it?
I have, actually.
So I think the most incredible thing about Persian Feta is it's very different to a traditional feta. It really is this indulgent, incredibly creamy, luscious mouthfeel that you get from this product. And one of the main differences being cow's milk. So traditionally feta is a goat or sheep combination, but what makes our product so incredible, it is this incredibly decadent, creamy cow's milk cheese that you get at the base of this product. It's then brined or dry salted and marinated in oil and herbs. We use only the best milk that we can source, the best herbs. All of the ingredients are really premium. So the end result is just an incredibly beautiful and decadent product. We've found over the years, a lot of people have emulated this style of cheese, but if you cut corners with this style of cheese, you just don't get the overall premium product that it needs to be. And I think that's why it stood the test of time and has been championed by chefs and retailers and delis for over 25 years now.
Oh, I'm already feeling like having some Persian Feta cheese now. You explained so beautifully. So, Nikki, tell me one thing. In your new role of being the export manager, what's the role and how do you go about finding your markets and what do you do?
Yeah, so when I first came back to the dairy in the role of export manager, I was looking for a challenge, but my goodness, COVID, I picked a very challenging time to come back in this role. And I had big plans to travel, to get out into new markets, to meet buyers, to conduct tastings and all the fantastic things that you would do as part of an export strategy. But unfortunately, with COVID, that wasn't a possibility. So for me, it was a good opportunity to go back to the drawing board, to look at our story, to look at our ingredients, our packaging. And really, for me, it was about reigniting with what our story was, what made us incredibly unique and why export markets would be interested in the product. It's been an incredible process to do that, to take that story and those products out to the market. It's been very challenging to get people to sample the product, obviously with freight being an issue. The interest that we now have, I think the perception of Australian products overseas is they are premium. So we're in a good space there. And I think particularly dairy, I think the interest in Australian dairy is growing immensely. So it's really been about getting our story out there, getting products out to people. And look, as soon as I can get back out in the markets and start traveling again, it's going to be fantastic. Because I think for me, it's such an incredible product. I can just let the product do the talking.
In terms of your current target markets, what are those target markets you're looking at for your cheese?
So we have previously, for about 20 years, we've been exporting to the Middle East. So that market has been fantastic throughout COVID as well. We've seen some really good growth, sort of 40, 60% growth from pre-COVID numbers there. So we're looking to increase our retail opportunities in those markets. The UK, we have incredible interest from the market over there, but freight has been a challenge. We're hoping to be back in the US in the next 12 months. Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea is just about to come on board. So we've got a lot of interest. I think the good thing for us is being a handmade product. We're not looking for world domination. We're just looking to find the right fit in the right markets. So we're looking for the high-end premium delis, retail spaces. So at the moment, it really is just about finding the right distribution and the right.
And Nathan, you joined as a CEO before some time. Can I ask you, what's your vision for Yarra Valley Dairy?
Look, I mean, there's a couple of answers there, Tejas. It's Yarra Valley Dairy itself, we want to position as one of the leading handmade artisan cheese products in this country and internationally. Yarra Valley cheese, which is made in a different technique to Yarra Valley Dairy, but still a premium product. And that is really well positioned through our major trading partners such as Woolworths and Coles and Costco, Aldi. And again, that's a great opportunity for us to enter markets such as the UAE, New Zealand, because they're quite strong with supermarket trade themselves. So it's a really good footprint for us to get in there. When I first came on board, it was about working out and restructuring both brands because the team were a little confused with what Yarra Valley cheese meant to them and what Yarra Valley Dairy meant. So our marketing manager worked very hard on gathering data and working out what those brands actually meant to our consumers. Certainly the first piece of work that Catherine did was the Yarra Valley cheese rebrand, but also digging into what the values of that brand were and why do our consumers love it? Why do they want to eat this? Why is it growing with our trading partners? So the vision was to get the brands right and for the team internally to understand who we're pushing towards. As Nikki mentioned, about picking the right partners internationally for us and what brands sit where. So it's not about chasing volume, we have interest from a major trading partner in the United States. And if they push the go button tomorrow, capacity-wise, we would be in a world of pain. A nice challenge to have, right? But it's, again, a lot of capital expenditure to build and expand. But ideally, what we want to do is position ourselves as a leading premium artisan cheesemaker in our areas of expertise, but to also then underpin that with financial stability for the business to move forward so that we can do that confidently and expand our footprint, essentially. And that might be through manufacturing or building new facilities or whatever it may be into the future. So that's a decision that Mary and some of her board and confidants would make that decision on in conjunction, hopefully with myself. Where we're headed at the moment, and certainly creating the role of export, is more about making sure that we spread our risk as a business. I love doing business with everybody, but it's good that you don't have, one particular trading partner that might be 25, 30, 35% of your business. And if you lose a listing within a supermarket, it can hurt you quite badly from a cash flow perspective. So our mantra really is to get awareness of the brands, but we want to do it in the way that we've always done it, and that's about letting the product speak for itself. But Nikki will tell you more about this, but the rebrand of Yarra Valley Dairy, the labelling is just second to none. Some of the photographs and videos that have been done recently for that brand, like you said earlier, Tejas, where Nikki's describing the cheese that makes you want to eat it. You look at some of these visuals and you look at the rebranding of Yarra Valley Dairy and Yarra Valley Cheese, and I'm very proud of the team of where they've got it to, because it actually speaks a premium product.
So obviously your strategy is expand the revenue and cash flow sources. Yarra Valley, it is a premium brand, but position as on the premium brand, your strategy is that you want to distribute through supermarkets. And Nathan, you also mentioned that, some of those markets have got strong supermarket cultures, and that helps your brand to get distributed as well. Am I hearing it right? That's how you are thinking, Nikki?
As Nathan mentioned, because we do have two brands within the company. So we have our Yarra Valley Cheese brand, which we do service more of the FMCG market, and our Yarra Valley Dairy brand, which is more food service. It's more your premium artisan ranging. So we do have the ability to service both markets. And absolutely, I think within some of the markets that we're approaching, there is opportunity within the supermarket space. For me, it's, as it has worked domestically here, to champion the artisan range within food service, to have chefs who are putting that product on the menu, recognizing that it is Yarra Valley Dairy, marinated cheese is such a great way to get some gravitas behind the brand and some interest with the product. And that's where we're really lucky to have those two brands. So we can sit.
You mentioned some challenges. How has been the business in the last 12 months? How is it looking currently, and what are the key challenges
that most exporters have been facing, obviously, with freight, with port delays? I think we've been so lucky with the existing markets where we've had those relationships and those logistics setups already in place. We've been really lucky to keep those markets going, but new markets has been a huge challenge during COVID. You have buyers overseas, similar to they are here, they're stressed, they're understaffed, they're trying to minimize risk. So sometimes taking on board a new customer that you haven't received a shipment of before or trialed the product was a risk. Getting buyers to move forward with a product without having any sampling available in store. It's hard for us going into a lot of markets because marinated fresh cheese isn't even a product in a lot of markets globally. I recently was entering our cheese in a World Cheese Award, and there wasn't even a category for marinated cheese. So it shows you that we're really going onto a global arena that consumers are not sure really yet what to do with this product. For us to get that message and show people what the application is with this new product without doing that with sampling, has proven very tricky. I think that's why you were saying I'm getting better at talking about cheese, because for the last 12 months I've had to sit in front of buyers and eat cheese on the screen and talk about it, which is it's very, very tricky. And staff has been a huge challenge, hasn't it, Nathan? I think domestically, but we are feeling a bit of ease in that department. We've been able to hire some incredible staff members, and cost of goods.
Would that be fair to say, Nathan, is that the kind of challenges which we are facing in Australia and you as a business as well, the other dairy manufacturers around the world or your competitors in other countries, as an example, or even in Australia, are facing probably the similar kind of challenges, right?
Yeah, absolutely they are. I've described the second half of financial year 22 as the most challenging 6 months I've ever seen in business. It really came to the forefront for myself in about the middle of December last year. There's been a lot of sleepless nights. There has been, how do we cycle through this? Because all of a sudden, one of our key ingredients, the second most valuable ingredient that goes into our product in terms of oil, doubled in price in not a very long space of time. And to pass on price increases is quite a logistical challenge, in particular with our trading partners who do expect a 90-day period where they can adjust their own pricing. This was followed up by labour shortages and then labour increases in terms of costs, raw material costs in terms of packaging increasing. And then usually the new year milk pricing, you'll receive that from the farmers usually in May. So that's when I usually finalise the budget for the next financial year. Once we've got that and can work out what the cost of goods are going to be. I received that on the 28th of June at 6 p.m. and nearly fell off my chair because there was a 35.2% price increase in milk. We're lucky we've had a relationship with suppliers for quite some time, and we know the quality of product we get is outstanding. And as a business, and one of our core values is that we do pay farm gate levies because the farmers have done it hard for a number of years, and good on them this year. They're making, as the old expression goes, hay while the sun shines. We had to lock in our annual volume straight away. My priority was to protect the business based on what we see as a forecast, as a budget for the year. At this point in time in Australia, there's going to be a shortage of milk in certainly the second half of financial year into 2023. Now, that depends on what international markets do. There's a small rumour that maybe New Zealand might have some excess milk, which could find its way across to Australia and assist with some dairy products being cheese and so on. We personally wouldn't use it because we hang our hat on the fact that we're 99.9% Australian content and we source as much locally as we possibly can. Yeah, very challenging period. We had a terrific catch up with the team on Wednesday and we sort of talked about, I love to do a reflection piece with the team and we talk about, 12 months ago when we did the planning for the financial year just gone. I don't think anyone gets an opportunity to stop and think about what they've done and what they've achieved within that 12-month period against what their strategies were for the year. And I think each and every departmental head that talked about the year had just about ticked most of those boxes except for a lot of the unforeseen ones that nobody saw coming. Again, really good planning from the team, but the second half hit us pretty hard. We saw, as I said, the cost increases and small revenue increases, but that's offset by price increases and some severely hefty ones as well. And we were very fortunate that for the start of financial year, I managed to have some meetings with some of the senior executives within our trading partners and talk to them about the challenges ahead. And they are all very supportive in moving the prices forward and wanting to support Australian dairy industry, which is great. And we're also very grateful for Nikki, same thing, trying to establish some of these export markets and then going straight back to our trading partners internationally and saying, oh, by the way, I'm terribly sorry, but we've got to lift the prices before we've even shipped a box. And again, very supportive, understanding what the challenges are within. So unfortunately, it's an erosion of farmers not having made enough money in previous years off their cattle for milking purposes. The amount of cattle in Australia available for dairy has dwindled across the years. It's showing signs of recovery and it now needs encouragement from bodies such as Dairy Australia and dairy industry that will try and encourage farmers to continue to expand that. I've always been a believer in paying a fair price for material so that it's more sustainable longer term. Let's fix prices for 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be. And if that's a higher price at the beginning, that's okay. And if the market fluctuates up and down, it still protects everybody. When I first joined the business, we couldn't lock in milk contracts for a 12-month period because it was literally, if there was an abundance, it would be cheaper. If there was a shortage, you would pay a lot more. I explained and sat down with suppliers that we couldn't operate like that and have a model that way because we can't have these major fluctuations on our cost of goods because it's all at the wrong time of year. We need to set out an average. So we managed to work with suppliers that lock in prices for us for a 12-month period so that we can cover the financial year quite soundly and know what we're reporting against.
It makes so much of sense, locking in prices. That gives you the certainty. That also gives your customer certainty of pricing. Makes so much of sense. Talking about May, you referred to May in another way, but I read in one of the news pieces that you had won some award where in the Dairy Industry Association of the National Product Awards, one of the awards for your cheese. Is that correct, Nikki?
We actually won the World Cheese Awards about 15 years ago for the Persian Feta. We produce an amazing array of products. So we have our marinated cheeses, but we also make, as we mentioned, the Huberts, which is an incredible wash rind cheese. And our semi-mature goat's cheeses quite often win awards. Our gentle goat, which is a very beautiful fresh goat's cheese, quite often wins awards as well. And that product is just testimony to the pure goat's milk, the amazing goat's milk that we purchase from a farm in Mansfield.
You have spoken in the last 12 months online, tested cheese, talked about it to potential customers and new customers, or even existing customers for the new product. Tell me, what do you tell potential new buyers about your cheese? Why they should be choosing your products versus your competitors' products?
Our products are obviously all Australian made from premium local milk. As I mentioned earlier, many people have tried to emulate the style of Persian Feta since its creation in 94. But one of the key elements of Persian Feta is obviously Australian ingredients, premium ingredients. A lot of people in Australia make a style of Persian Feta, which unfortunately can sit at around 30% Australian ingredient. And there are a lot of producers who will purchase Danish feta or fetas from other parts of the world and then repackage that here in Australia. So we pride ourselves on only producing from Australian ingredients. Our recipe has not really changed since 1994, before when Mary first created the product. The only difference that we have made is just improvements to the packaging, looking at sustainability. We're always looking to improve the ingredients and make sure, for example, we've recently changed our garlic to Australian garlic. So always looking for improvements.
So Nathan, we talked about last 12 months. We talked about some of the challenges, etc. I guess markets are changing. The freight situation is stabilizing slightly as compared to last, let's say 6 months, 8 months back. What is your future strategy? Let's say for next 12 to 24 months, how do you see the business and what are your key elements of the strategy?
When we've taken on board all of these price increases that I've spoken to you about in terms of raw materials, for us, when we've passed on those price increases, it's about stabilising. I wouldn't refer to us as opportunists and think that we could add a little bit more margin and make a little bit more money. We want to work with our partners in terms of making sure that we deliver great product that's good value to the consumer overall. So that is always top of mind and key as part of our strategy, is that everything we do is the very best that we can put out all the time. So we monitor quality all the time. In terms of freight issues and challenges, Nikki knows my thoughts in terms of we like to do everything FOB when it's going into the export markets, because the fluctuations of freight, generally, we don't make money on freight. We don't want to make money on freight. So if people are asking us for CIF terms, it's really hard because we've been fortunate enough to have been served in first class on Emirates for, it's now in its 14th year with Yarra Valley Dairy Persian Feta. We export 20-foot refrigerated reefers across to them. When I joined the business, you're talking about $2,500 thereabouts to get that from the port of Melbourne into Dubai. That's now pushing up towards $13,000 in, what are we talking, 3 years? It's incredible. Emirates have not faltered in the fact that they still want to serve that product. And yes, if you travel first class, I'm sure the additional freight cost can be factored and allowed for, but it also adds a layer of complexity to their business in terms of additional costs as well. So when that happens, it's like everything, it all pushes back onto all of us. We pay more for airfares and so on and so forth. So look, our strategy is about keeping our portfolio very high quality, fairly simple. We have a new product development team, which Nikki is a part of. So we're always looking at innovation within the business that meets the ethos and values of the business. So it has to remain preservative free. It has to remain, going into sustainable packaging. It has to be something that is within the realms of what we're capable of doing, but also delivering something to our consumers to make sure that they are trying new products. So we certainly have a fairly full calendar for the next 12 to 24 months. So range expansion, market expansion, and again, taking the key risks out of business by spreading our risk in terms of distribution and who we work with. around the world.
If I just played back what I heard from you, basically, we're talking about changing the terms, commercial terms, Incoterms, which will make sure the freight do not become the barrier as such from your perspective, but changing to FOB where possible. That's one thing. Obviously, new market development with the new product introductions, others trust of the strategy. They are the core factors, plus obviously keeping the overall quality extremely high as per your ethos and principles. That they are the key elements of the strategy. Would that be fair summation?
Very good summary. Absolutely spot on. We're not an overly complicated business. It is more about making sure that people are safe, products safe, and what we deliver to the consumer is absolutely spot on. So, and also giving the team that confidence in our products as well. It's great to sit down with a member from the production team and say, do you realise that, that tub of Persian Feta that you've just made sells for $16? And they look at you and they go, does it really? And I'm saying, look, when you go into a supermarket, take a look at it, take some pride because you've done that. You've had a hand in making that. And that really makes somebody feel quite good. That cheese that you mentioned earlier, that Hubert, when we were developing that product, and we've done a lot of work on that, Nikki was part of that team in Nikki's previous role. And Nikki and Catherine, who's the marketing manager, came to me and they said, right, this is the product, and took me through the whole premise of it. Talked about our distribution partner in Australia here, a Calendar Cheese Company for Yarra Valley Dairy. What price points could it retail for? I looked at the price list, I looked at the market, and I said, I'd like to position, this is a 180 gram piece of cheese, washed rind. I said, I'd like to position it at a retail price point of $18. Kath and Nikki nearly threw it at me and said, you're kidding. That's going to be the most expensive washed rind in Australia. And I said, good. And let's make it the best washed rind in Australia. So we spent a lot of time working with our artisan cheesemaker to get it right, because certainly, and let me tell you, we wasted a lot of product, but eventually we got it right. That cheese now sells for over $20, and as you saw, it won the award. And we're super proud of it. It's actually one of the biggest selling products in our retail venue, and we see approximately 250,000 visitors a year in a full year when there's no lockdowns. Nobody's got a problem with buying it. Our distribution partner, they can't get enough. We can only make a certain amount of it, but we still need to continue to innovate. So certainly something I give a lot of thought to, and where we sit as a product I'd like to develop into our major trading partners and position that in a different part of the cheese category that they wouldn't even contemplate. And the reason I want to do that is because from a price point and quality perspective, I want it to sit in a different area because it's got a premium feel to it. And, most people, if it sat in the area of snacking, for example, we would stand out like a sore thumb because the price point would be double and a bit more. If you put that into a premium cheese area within a supermarket, I think it would sell because people would see it and they'd look it up and they'd go, oh yeah, good, I trust the brand. And I think that is what we've worked so hard on, is getting people to trust our brand. And that's also part of our long-term strategy.
So tell me, Nikki, about this cheese. I'm quite intrigued. So you brought the cheese to Nathan and his assessment was it's a premium cheese to that level. Tell me about the cheese now.
Our inspiration for this product really was an Epoisse, so a really stinky, traditional French style wash rind. NPD dairy is one of the reasons why I've been here for so long. Some weeks I'll have to sit around with the team and spend a good 2 or 3 hours a week just tasting cheese, and it's always a good day in the dairy when we're doing NPD. We were very particular how we wanted this cheese to evolve. We wanted it to take on really its own life. I think like with any cheeses, when you're inspired by France or Italy, you take inspiration from these cheeses, but when you make it here in Australia with the milk, with the cheesemakers, the different microbiology of the factory, it becomes something else. It really becomes our take on this product, and that's how that product evolved. And I think, we were a bit nervous to take on such a traditional French style cheese and make it our own. I think that's where the hesitation came, around just really owning it and moving forward and charging the price that we really needed to make this product worthwhile. But my goodness, it's almost surpassed Persian Feta sales here at the dairy in the cheese shop, and it's an incredible addition for both cheese board. We do a baked hot pot here in our cheese shop, which I was saying before, you just dig in with crusty bread into this incredible product, and it's become a bit of a cult hit really here in the cheese shop. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to export that to the Middle East because it is washed in brandy, but I'll be finding some new markets for it hopefully soon. It is a challenge with shelf life with the semi-matured products because you're only looking at about 6 to 8 weeks shelf life from productions. For me, minimizing risk in export at the moment, I'm really focusing on the marinated cheeses, which have around 6 months shelf life. I'd have a few sleepless nights, I think, if I was exporting the 6-week product at the moment.
Looking forward to you finding ways to export it. It sounds like a fantastic product. And yeah, I will visit your premises, especially to have that special recipe that you're saying it's becoming a cult. Fantastic.
And look, I think the great thing about exporting into new markets with this marinated cheese is that, you know, we're sending a product that is so typically Australian. I think in Australia, cheese making is relatively new in the industry, and there's not a lot of cheeses that we can call an Australian cheese. But since we created marinated cheese in Australia, it really has become, well, it's become a category in its own right. And I think in most retail spaces, it'll be very hard to find a cheese section that doesn't have some kind of representation of marinated fresh cheese. I think there's an opportunity to grow that in export and make our own space, you know, really selling what we say is just a jar of sunshine. It really is. It's an example of Australia's love of, you know, outdoors, salads, sharing food, premium products. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, say, for example, in Europe and try and sell an Australian cam or brie, where we're really selling a piece of Australian lifestyle and a representation of our culture.
So this is what I wanted to understand more. Tell me about this history of the marinated cheese. You're telling me that Yarra Valley was the first in Australia to come up with this marinated cheese. Tell me about it, because...
Yeah, and look, it's a great story. Mary was inspired when she first started to produce a fresh cheese of some way of preserving the product and creating something new. I think she was, around the time she invented it, she was working with a lot of wineries and producers in the Yarra Valley. I think around that time it was sun-dried tomatoes were a big thing in the Yarra Valley, and I think that was her initial inspiration with the olive oil marinade. And she also worked with a cheesemaker at the time who had been inspired by a lot of traditional preserving techniques. So yeah, the idea was to marinate the product.
Nathan, you have been exporting since such a long time. What would be your suggestion or guidance to any new exporter or even your peers who wants to get into the export market? What should they keep in mind and how should they go about it?
Firstly, I'd say that choosing the right partner is paramount in any market, and just making sure that the trading partners that you approach and you talk to, you do a number of things. So you really should be doing a fair amount of research in terms of their reach into the market, talking to some of their customers within the market to see how they perform and how they treat your product in terms of logistics, but making sure, most importantly, that it's a fit for your brand and that your brand is being represented to the level that you would like it to be. And that is supported with, you know, Nikki being available to be in market moving forward. But really, to me, it's about doing research to start with. It's about having an innate understanding of your own brand and working out where you want to position it. Where do you want to be in that market? Nikki and I spoke at huge length about where we wanted to be in the United Kingdom. And it was all about working with premium delis and cheese shops and going through premium distributor. And it wasn't about chasing the volume. It was about let's build the brand slowly. Nikki fought like crazy to get some product over to the UK because logistics was a nightmare. The great team at Austrade represented us at the London Food Fair. And what a hit, what an absolute hit. That really gave us the impetus to work with this particular company, and this is who we will work with moving forward. But that's taken Nikki, I reckon, the best part of 12 months to identify that company and to position our brand based against the brand values and our company values and who we want to work with. So it's more important that you find a positioning for your brand, but having that innate understanding of that plan. Where do you want to be? Which market channels do you want to go into? Who do you want to speak to? And how does your brand get represented? And in the past, there's always been a real, particularly in my background, wine industry days from years ago, you would sometimes go and chase a volume market, and that would backfire more times than not because you really didn't have your plans, your brand plans, and all those sorts of things in place, and knowing the channels that you wanted to get into. So for us, it was a lot of consideration and thought before going there, and I'd recommend that to anybody. If it takes you an extra 6 months to find the right distribution partner, I would suggest that that's okay.
Really sound advice, especially in today's circumstances. It becomes even more important. So thank you, Nathan. I'm sure people will benefit from the advice and from your experience. Thank you very much. It is a fantastic story, and I wish Yarra Valley Dairy and the Yarra Valley Cheese, both the brands, really well. So all the best.
Very, very welcome.
Thank you very much.
This has been the Global Trade Made Easy podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode of innovative ideas from trade leaders across the globe. For even more insights on global trade, visit our website at ImpexDocs.com.au, where we share resources for successful international trade management. Until next time, happy trading.